estate investor and fund operator. Over the years, I've worked with a wide range of investors who have built very, very successful businesses, professionals, operators in various ways, many of whom eventually start to ask the same question. Is there a smarter way to deploy capital, especially retirement capital, outside of the stock market? On Deployed, I'm not here to pitch. I'm really here to understand how successful people think about capital, risk, and long term decisions and explore how tools like the self directed IRA can fit into that thinking. All right. Today, I'm welcomed by Trent Mahler. He's a licensed clinical social worker, performance coach, and educator dedicated to helping people lead, think, and perform at their highest potential under pressure over the long term. I love that. How you doing today, Trent? Thanks for
I'm
joining me.
good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm always good. I'm always good. Thanks for asking.
I
Thanks.
love it.
Yeah, so I am excited to talk to you because I come from the social work world. I spent maybe my first 5 or 6 years out of college doing social work, case management, and helping people. So that world is always dear to me. How
Yeah,
long?
that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. How long have you been in the space?
I've been in this space about 5.5, 6 years now, so not too long, but slowly found myself here. And as I found here, it's been home and it's been just a place to keep on building my roots and continuing to grow from. So it's been great.
Nice, nice, nice. Now, what type of you know, what community do you work with? So I should probably ask it that way.
Yeah, I have like a niche that I'm focused on. I do general therapy, so I do have a general population that I do see that is more of a minority of my time. The majority is more focused on high performance individuals. So these are people in charge of money, other people, decisions that impact life, like communities. People in moments where pressure really starts leaning on them, and then making sure that they handle it the right way and they don't flinch, they don't hesitate, they don't, react and make a bad decision that they're end up regretting and trying to come back from for years afterwards. So we're really taking that clinical aspect of things and implementing it in that way for that population of people that most people look at and just assume they're good because they're in great spots or they're doing awesome things. But
Hmm.
that's not all it takes to get into a good spot mentally or even in our own life. And
Hmm.
that's where we come in to really be at that intersection of performance and mental health to help really build people up and help them do some amazing things.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, to your point, a lot of people assume, oh, he's successful or he's doing so great, but we're all human. We all have challenges.
Mhm.
We all, have doubts. We all have pressure, especially if
Yeah.
you're performing at that level. So it's much needed. That's cool. That's cool. This is a quick
Yeah.
question,
Mhm.
and I don't want to go on a tangent too often. Have you seen an influx of like ChatGPT or individuals leveraging that or using that? I don't want to say as a crutch, but in addition to you as a clinical therapist?
In some ways, I've seen people use it. I've seen people, bounce questions off it, kind of reflect through it, which has been helpful for a lot of clients I work with. But I will say there is this like general distrust for this type of stuff. Like they don't want to lean on it too much. It's almost like seen as like a supportive thing because you can kind of tell like they don't really want to give in to what the AI bot, whatever it is saying of like, I'm not sure if this is something I should really lean my life on. So if it's like in tangent with what we're already doing, a lot of people will use it and it's supportive of like reflecting and help me figure out the pattern I'm in. But what it's like, just help me, I see a lot of hesitation from people because there's this like piece of like we realize how good AI is, but we also realize the hallucinations and how it can lead us down paths and just try and continue to make us like it, that we can go off in the complete wrong way. So there is that bit of hesitation, which is good because it's a great tool, but we don't want to lean overly into something and have it just protect us forever and not assume any risks are there. So, I mean, like any financial decision, you can't just go in bullheaded and just like, "Oh, I'll be fine and hope it all works out." We got to kind of take our time and make sure we're doing the right thing.
Hmm. Yep, yep, yep. And I love how you pointed out, going back to ChatGPT, like people realize that it's trying to get it to like you. I mean, it's plain English. I think that's
Yeah,
the bias that people have to look through the lens. That's always something I always like to ask therapists. So I appreciate you.
of course.
Okay. So before we get into investing, I want to know a little bit more about you. What was your path to success, or what was your path to where you are today? Tell us a little bit about
Yeah. It was kind of a funky path. Honestly, when I was in college, I was getting my degree in criminal justice. I thought I was going to be a lawyer. I graduated and worked at a law firm for about a year and a half because I wanted to see if I was going to like it before going to law school and getting into a bunch of debt and ended up not liking it. So I gave it a shot and, good thing I did because I didn't really like it. It felt like doing homework for a living. And the hardest part was it was the same homework every day.
Uh,
And I'm not saying that's all being a lawyer is, but that was my experience. And I realized I wanted to do a little more than that. So once I went through the whole existential crisis of I have no idea what I'm going to do now, I jumped around a little bit. I got into teaching, and when I was in teaching, they had me do some crisis intervention where I was just helping some kids when they were struggling with stuff, and I realized I was kind of good at it. So then I looked into social work and what was out there, and then as I found social work, I saw clinical social work, so I could be a clinical therapist, and then I just kind of kept building from there. And then once I got to the point of being a therapist, I started to reflect on my past because part of me coming to Reno, where I'm at, is I got a scholarship to play on the football team for the college at the University of Nevada. So I was a D1 athlete and I saw that struggle of a lot of people making D1 sports that didn't really have anybody to lean on because you're at this level, this is the goal, this is the dream, you should be doing great. So I had a lot of teammates struggling. Me myself, I was struggling at times, but there really wasn't anybody out there to connect with besides just like a general normal therapist, and that just didn't speak to us. So as I had gotten into therapy myself, I wanted to create something that was for these high pressure individuals that most people wouldn't understand the struggle because most people are like, once you get to that point, you should just love your life and everything should be great, but that's not the whole story. So it's kind of a weird path how I got here, but it's been such a natural fit as I've kind of gone through that. And I think that's great for anyone listening too, that if you're not sure what to do, sometimes the best thing is just try things out and see what connects. And once it does, like your life is set until you're ready to switch it up and pivot.
I love it. I love it, Trent. I love it. And that's so funny that you mentioned you being a D1 athlete. And real quick, what position did you play? I was
I
wondering.
was a middle linebacker.
Nice, man. Nice. So,
Yeah,
um, in sports, I'm a big sports guy. I play basketball. I
it's
played
great.
D3. My daughter plays volleyball high level, right? She has the
Nice.
opportunity to go D1. And
Awesome.
within sports, you're starting to see a lot more athletes talk about mental health. Jason
Yeah.
Tatum in the NBA, he hurt his Achilles last year, and during the All-Star break, they did a whole 20-minute segment on him. And he was real honest and opening up about his fears and his doubts and what he was going through.
Yeah.
My daughter, you can tell that sometimes she has a confidence issue, right? Because
Mhm.
14, right? This is her first time really getting into it where it's starting to get more competitive, right? She's on a high level travel team. We're starting to think about D1 colleges and going through the recruiter process. And I can tell that, her confidence really comes from externally. Like if people are telling her she's good, then she believes it. But
Yep.
she's struggling to believe it from within. So uh, I appreciate that you mentioned that because I'm starting to see that become more and more common within athletics. And I
Yeah.
know that that's something that I'm trying to instill in her. And even my 9-year-old in basketball, right? He's playing up. And when he
Mhm.
goes plays with a certain team, I notice he doesn't play the same way versus he plays when he's playing against his age group. And I was telling
Yeah.
him, like, listen, you got to be confident. You have to believe in yourself. And he did it last night. And it was kind of cool to see the fruits of him later. Like, oh, okay. Yeah, I do believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's
do you work with a lot of athletes currently, or?
Yeah, I do. I work with a lot of athletes. Actually, the last football season, I worked with a whole team. I was just like their therapist on the sideline kind of thing, where I would help give feedback to coaches of what I'm seeing in the team culture wise. Cause I also do things through, big groups. So I also work with companies and businesses about structures and systems of how things are running, because that's all, the clinical work as well that's kind of getting implemented. So I was working with the team to help them deal with a lot of this stuff. There's a lot of guys that dealt with self-confidence issues. There's a lot of guys dealing with just other things in life or having that spotlight on them and what does everyone else think and all these kind of things. And the team I worked with specifically struggled because they had a really tough season. They had some things go sideways very early on, and I think they ended up winning like 3 games. So it was a rough season. It was helping people go through that, helping the seniors with the heartbreak of this is not what we thought our senior season was going to look like and everything in between. And like you're saying, so many athletes connect their worthiness of who they are and their self-worth as a human to what they do under the spotlight.
Yeah,
And it can be so tough because a lot of times people are questioning themselves before they even start. So you're
yeah,
kind of putting yourself behind that 8 ball. But when they can get themselves in that right mindset and they can do something kind of like your son, where you really see them take advantage of that moment and build themselves up, and they're like, oh, I can do this.
yeah,
Those are those magic moments. And that's a lot of what we're building is how do we build up the structure so when you're ready to launch, you can launch and then you see what you can do and then all the confidence and everything follows. You know, it would be great if we could just build people up and they felt amazing about themselves, but that's not how it works. That comes after. You know, that's one of those outcome things. So we got to focus on what we can put into it and then we see the results and we realize what we got.
That's
So that's why so many people are pushing it with athletes because it's really putting people up and above, and without it, you're falling behind the pack, really.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So yeah,
Yeah,
I could talk about mindset and performance all day. I love that stuff as well. So I really want to stay focused in hand on what we're talking about today. So thank
sure. Yeah.
so you had an interesting path to your success, right? And
Mhm.
what was cool for you is that you tried a couple of things and then you noticed something that really called to you. When we start to talk about, money and retirement, was there a moment where your relationship with money or risk started to change?
Absolutely. I think the big moment it changed was starting a family. Once
Oh,
I got to a point of getting married and having a daughter and all these kind of things myself, the relationship with money was really different. And that's because I didn't really have to be responsible for much before that, honestly. Like, life was pretty cheap. I could just kind of get by and hang out and live life and do whatever I wanted to do. And, I was saving up for things and vacations and trips and, things I wanted for myself and putting things into retirement and things, but it just wasn't as much of a priority because you're kind of just like living life, doing your thing. Once I got to the point of like now we're building a family and we're building a life and all these things, everything else just changes priority wise. Where it's like, what do I need to get done? What do I need to have secured? Do I want a house? Do I want to make sure that my daughter has an education plan that she can lean on and all these kind of things? So it starts just making you think of different things in different ways. And, I think this is something that's pretty powerful for a lot of people in their 20s is they feel guilty of what they're doing.
mm,
And I think that balance is important between like taking care of our future, but also taking care of us now. I
mm.
actually spoke at a wealth advisors event last night for a wealth management group about this stuff. The talk was talking about thriving today to thrive for tomorrow because we have to find balance between both, where we're building up for our retirement and our future and building a life that we can really enjoy. But we also got to enjoy now because if we're going to just do the long term aspect of I'm saving up and saving up and saving up, like at some point, what are we doing all this hard work for if we're never going to enjoy it? It's like having a diet when you never have a cheat day. It's
Yeah,
going to be really hard. Like you got to at some point be able to enjoy yourself where you're at, but we can't take that too far either and start ruining your future because we got to take care of future us too because no one else is going to.
I love it. I love it. So it sounds like as you became more successful, the way you thought about capital kind of evolved.
It did. It did. I think early on it was very much what could I get out of this? What do I want to do right now?
Mhm.
And then now it's more, how do I get this stuff working for me? Like, how do I create more leverage through my own capital so I don't have to do as much work with it and it can kind of set me up to do what I want to do? Because, like, as a single man, life is just so much more what do you want to do? Now it's like I have a bunch of things I have to do, but what I want to do is just spend time with my family and hang out. But I have all these responsibilities to take care of. So being able to pull on more and more leverage to help set me up to do more of that is the ultimate goal because that's the ultimate freedom of being able to do whatever you wanted to do.
I love it. I love it. So what do you think separates people who actually accumulate capital from those who actually like deploy it well?
Well, I think these are two very different strategies, and I think they do deal with two different things mentally too.
Hmm.
One thing is accumulation. I mean, we're naturally set up to accumulate as hunter gatherers because as hunter gatherers, there's never a time where it's like, I got enough food, I'll be good forever. Like grocery stores and all that kind of stuff wasn't a thing. So the idea of I need more and more and more was always there. I mean, this is why we could see some people that have more money they could ever spend in their life and they still want more. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a part of our DNA. It's who we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is a big aspect of us, but we also have to be willing to understand like I can't just store all of these things. I also have to enjoy some of it too. And that's the balance point of making sure that we can take advantage of it the right way and also being able to enjoy the things that we have now and then knowing what line do I need to find where I need to push this somewhere else, where I got to save it for the future, or I got to start compounding it into something, or I got to put this piece here so I can turn it into a down payment on a property or whatever else I'm doing. And that long game is so hard because we're so set up short term versus long term. Because again, going back to hunter gatherers, what's going to happen a year from now doesn't really matter It's like I don't even know if I'm alive then. Let's do what's happening right now. So that short term versus long term piece, it pulls on all of us all the time. I mean, many of us out there have probably had times we wanted to do something, we just couldn't get ourselves to do it because what we wanted to do felt more comfortable than doing the hard thing.
Yeah.
And it's easy to fall into.
Yeah. No, well said. Well said. And uh, around risk, do you personally think about risks today differently than you did earlier in your career?
Definitely. When I was investing earlier in my career, it was much more aggressive. It was much more like, if this doesn't work out, it's not a huge deal, but if it does work out, it's going to be awesome. So
Hmm.
there was a little more volatility to it. And I think some of that was also, a lack of experience and getting more experience in it and understanding what happens when you do that. Because at the same time, if you have one or two things that you invest in that's a little volatile and it goes well, it's a very addicting game to be like, let me find another one.
Yeah.
So it's getting careful to not play that. I mean, a lot of people here in Reno know that with the casinos too. Sometimes you hit and you keep coming back and you lose everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a big part of it. But as I've kind of gone with the family and everything, you just realize you need more of a base and more of a steadiness to it, where some aspect of it can be put in a way where it's a little more risky. There is a more chance of upside, but some of it needs to be a little more safer, where it's like, I know this isn't going to just disappear because I need to have something to lean on, especially considering like building up a down payment or something like that.
Awesome. 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 How about liquidity? Like having cash on hand, does that play a role or is that important to you as in predictability?
It is in a way. It's not like the utmost most important thing. I like having a lot of things tied up in different things because, having things all liquid, it doesn't get a chance to build the same way. So I don't tie up everything, but I like having at least a good amount of things getting some sort of interest or some sort of exposure to gains.
Mhm.
Where, we can get to a point with some of these things that it doesn't do what we need it to do, and we got to kind of be a little more careful with it. So it's kind of finding out the right benefit, the right situation for you to kind of go forward with that and seeing where that leads you. And then kind of just trusting your gut as it's going of, do I need to adjust this? Is this continuing on the path it needs to be on? Or is there an aspect of this that's getting a little more risky and it's getting to a point where I got to do this differently?
Mm,
And, things are going to continue to change. Like we can't just close our eyes, put stuff in and just hope that everything's going to work out. We got to learn things. And this is where sometimes connecting with people and continuing to learn of what's going on and being involved is so helpful. And this is why I like being involved in these self-directed things, because I get to be a part of the process. I'm not just bringing some random person in to do it and I just hope they're doing it well. Like
right.
I know what's going on with all my things, and that might just be a control thing about me, but I like that. I enjoy doing these things and I enjoy learning about money and how we can make these things work for us. That's something I've enjoyed in college when I didn't even really have money to work with.
Right. No, that's awesome. I love that. I love that. And to your point, I'm the same way, right? I like control and it's just the way that I'm wired, right? And
Mhm.
for different people. So at this stage, what kind of investments don't interest you anymore, if any?
Well, the random investment advice I'd get in college from friends, probably not as interesting, where it's like, "Hey, this really cool thing is gonna blow up at some point." If I get, like, an actual sit down talk, I'm like, "Okay, you know what you're talking about." That's one thing, but a lot of times it's like, "No, I just saw this thing on Twitter." And I'm like, "Okay, man, this is not a good advice. Like, what are you talking about? You just saw something."
Yeah.
So I have gotten some of those over the years, and early on, especially with the social media stuff, the way people would talk about stuff, it made it seem like a for sure 100% thing of like, "Oh, this thing's gonna blow up. We have to do it." And then it's like nothing happened.
Yeah.
So, like, I think I've kinda learned and experienced through that a lot of times the way people talk about stuff, it's not what they're saying as the headline, it's what's in the actual article. What's the content of what they're saying? Like,
Yeah.
is there anything backing this up, or are they just talking about something that looks shiny?
Yeah.
Because the thing that looks shiny is cool, but that's usually not a great investment piece because you see these little bubbles form because other people see it the same way, and then they realize there's not much there, and then they all pull out. So
Yeah.
then you get left holding the bag.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. And social media, we talk about like Instagram and TikTok, and I love those, Facebook. I love those tools in moderation, but the we call it clickbait, right? I come from that
Mhm.
marketing space.
Yep.
You're getting really, really good at clickbait, and then now you can leverage things like AI. So yeah, it's funny to hear you say that. So how do you decide at this point whether something is worth your attention or is just noise?
It's a tough one. Some of it goes back to honestly trusting my gut. It's a weird thing. we all have our guts that tell us things all the time, and it's right so many more times than we want to give it credit for. And this is part of my work as a clinical therapist too, is helping people connect with their gut,
Mm,
because this was the thing that kept us alive when we lived out in nature
mm,
for hundreds of thousands of years. If
mhm.
we did not have our intuition and our gut instinct, we would all be dead. We wouldn't be a species.
Yes.
So nowadays, we can live our life through logic. We have safety, we have grocery stores, we have houses, we have shelters, we have all these things. So life is a little different. But that aspect of things is still a big part of that. And we got to make sure to realize where we come from and who we are, and that it is easy to get caught up in that. But we have to trust that gut. And if you're going into something, you get a feeling like it's just wrong, it might be just anxiety. That's why it's always good to make sure we can check in and distinguish the two so we know what we're dealing with. But it might be just an actual feeling like this might not be a good move. And sometimes we just got to trust ourselves. And there's not really a whole lot of logic behind it. We may not even have something to point at, but sometimes we just trust ourselves and we look back later and we're like, okay, that was a really good call. I'm glad I did that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And to your point, I love that you brought up gut instincts and intuition and instincts, because I think a lot of my success has leaned heavily on that. And oftentimes, people who may not understand what you're doing or may not be close to subjects that you're close to may not appreciate your decision or how you came to that conclusion, because you know who you are. To your point, he's like, I got a feeling about this. It's just the
Hmm.
energy about it. And oftentimes, sometimes one person may have a good instinct about something because it resonates with them, where the next person may not have the same, like, I don't know about that, because it doesn't resonate with you.
Yeah.
Everything isn't for everyone sometimes, and just
Hmm.
because maybe one person says, I don't think that'd be a good idea, it may not just be right for you. So I love how you share that. And it's hard, right? It's tough, right? Because we think about logic, we think about our friends. Is this my gut? Is this more me just being having anxiety? And yeah, that was one of the things early on that I just learned to trust my instincts. And I think that that really helps a lot of go-getters and entrepreneurs and people that are going out on their own.
Absolutely.
Comes down to that mindset, like you said too.
Yeah, no, and I think you made a really awesome point about the financial side of thing, that there's no right way to do it. And yeah, I love that you bring that up because so many people look at finances as you got to do it like someone else.
Yeah.
Like if I just copy this, I'll be rich, I'll do awesome, things will be
Right.
great. But that's not what it is. Like you have to find the thing that works for you. Like
Yes.
a financial strategy does not have to be something everyone else does.
Exactly.
And we talk about that with jobs where it's like, yeah, that's not for me, and that's fine. And that's easy. We can all accept that. But
Yeah.
to say that financially, so many people, I'm sure right now are like cringing a little bit. Like, no way, that's how it is. Because they're trying to like copy people that are successful.
Right.
But just because someone's successful doesn't mean that strategy is going to work for you. So
Yeah.
I really love that you brought that up because that is a point that causes almost paralysis for people because they put themselves in these boxes they're trying to be instead of letting them find the fit for them. And
Yes.
that's what's most important with our money.
Well, oh, I love that. I love that. I love that. So, switching towards the self-directed IRA, how did you first learn about that?
Actually, through one of my accountants. I had my own business, so I have an accountant I was working with. And as we were getting things set up, at one point he sat me down and he kind of gave me this spiel that he gives to everyone. He literally told me he gives it to everybody that he has this one talk has, and he'll never bring it up again because he doesn't want to annoy people, but he just feels like it's so important he has to say it, which is you need to save for retirement. Even
Yes.
if it's just like $100 a year, like it does not have to be anything crazy, but you have to do something. And
Yes.
I've seen this in my work. I've at times in the general therapy side, I've worked with people in retirement that are literally like stuck in their situations because they did not save for things. And it's such a hard thing, and we don't think it's going to be us. But this is why we got to take care of our future. And we can't be so scared that we only take care of our future and we don't live our life now. So
Mm,
that's a big aspect of it too. And just making sure that we can take care of ourselves as we need to so we can keep going.
yeah. Yeah. Oh man, I love how you share that. So, one of the biggest, there was two big motivators, and it just came to me as you were talking. There were two big
Hmm.
motivators for me to go out and try to be more financially for myself. Right.
Hmm.
It was, I wanted a nice shiny car. Like I wanted like a nice car. Like I want a car.
Yeah.
I
Oh
want to-
yeah.
But then the other thing was, just hearing from people who were smarter than me, right? Social Security may not be around when you get there,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
People would get up to retirement and then the stock market may crash. And then now you have to be a greeter at Walmart. So I
Hmm.
was always one that I wanted to take control of my future. So
Yeah.
when you mentioned that, like your accountant sitting you down and say, "Hey, listen, you got to do something for retirement." That was always kind of like in the back of my mind of why I'm doing what I'm doing, right? Uh,
Mhm.
One, to try to enjoy the now, right? Be able to go on vacations, be able to buy things, be able to, if my kids want something, be able to provide them. I never wanted to be the person that says, "Oh no, we can't afford that, we can't do that." So, you're
Yeah.
right. Yeah, and your account was right. So spot on about retirement. You got to do something. You got to do something.
Yeah. Yeah, and that just kinda naturally led to me learning about it, he didn't really push anything specific, he was like, "Just do something,"
Hmm.
and that's where I kinda started looking into things to find what would fit for me, and that's where I've kinda started to create my strategy, which started off through a Roth IRA as I started to kinda take care of that myself, and, as we were talking about a little bit before we got started about kinda getting closer to other assets and building up to other things, starting to have that build up into a way where I can do things on another side of like the stock market that's a little less long term. So I can pull things from that and invest in assets that I can continue to build up. But again, there's no right way to do this stuff. Some people are entirely in the stock market and that's all they want to do, and that's fine. Some people are almost entirely in assets and that's fine. It's
Hmm.
just again, what strategy is going to be for us. And that's why I really appreciate how my accountant came about it is he was truly like, I don't care what you do, and if you have questions, I'll help you. But I want you just to think about what's right for you in this. And that's what really started to get me on that path of like, it's not just a one-way thing. You can do it for you personally.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's awesome that he took that approach. So, what surprised you most once you understood how the self-directed IRA actually worked?
I think the thing that surprised me the most, honestly, was once I learned enough to get started, how much it just kind of goes on its own. Like once you get the basics, you can kind of just do your thing. And
Mhm.
then as you go from there, you can start learning new things and continuing to grow. But again, some of it goes back to your portfolio of what are you trying to do.
Mhm.
If you want to be just conservative and just do a bunch of things that are very safe and stable, it's very low pressure. It's not a whole lot of, risk that you're taking on, and it can just feel easy to do and just kind of allocate some things and just let it sit and kind of watch it grow.
Yeah.
But if we are going to take a little more of an aggressive path, especially with something long term like a retirement account, it's like, all right, we got to be a little strategic with this
Mhm.
because things may change and they may not change in the way I need it to over the time frame I need it to change in. So that's where having like maybe something set up is like a long term thing and maybe something more short term, like a brokerage account that you can kind of work through and start doing things with and have money that can turn more liquid that you can do things with in the asset market or anything like that, because that liquidity is important so you can jump on opportunities, because if you don't have liquidity you can't jump on an opportunity that shows up because you have nothing to use on it. So it's not having everything tied up, but it's having enough not tied up that you can use it when the right thing shows up, and that's a tricky balance.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So, what type of investments made the most sense for you inside the retirement account?
The way I like to invest is thinking about the future and what I think is going to be impactful.
Mhm.
So it may be different than a lot of other people, but I like to focus more big picture. So a lot of my investments in these big picture type long-term things like retirement accounts are kind of based on things I think are going to change in the world. So
Mhm.
like one thing I invested in pretty heavily is some ETFs and stuff, a little more conservative base where they're going to just be there and they kind of are what they are. Some of them are attached to aspects of the field that I think are going to improve,
Mhm.
one of which is like psychedelics. I think psychedelics is going to come into the field. There's more and more studies coming out about this stuff. So I've been invested in some psychedelic ETFs because I know that's going to be kind of the next step in the field in general, which is really exciting stuff and knowing where that might head. But then some of this is also focused on other things, just like news wise. Like I have a solid investment towards nuclear energy
Mhm.
because of all the AI and all the things going on and seeing the amount of energy needs that we have and also seeing the issues we're seeing with oil and that level of energy, and also the issues logistically we're seeing with like solar and wind power and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
If we look at the actual like efficiency of things, nuclear makes the most sense. It's the easiest to do in terms of size. It doesn't have as much waste. Cost wise, it's easier to run. Honestly, the only reason nuclear isn't like the top thing even now is it's scary.
Mhm.
So seeing that and understanding where we're headed and how much more energy we're going to need and knowing where we're at with that has kind of directed my flow of like where do I invest, and that's what's led me to look into and try and understand certain companies that are in that field and what they're doing so I can invest towards that and build a future where hopefully that future goes that way and continues to build up my retirement accounts as well. And then I have the conservative side that kind of balances out if my call does go wrong and I have to readjust.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I like the way that you look at that. I was speaking to someone, and, and what you, it's common sense, and Buffett talked about it, like invest in what you know, right? You
Yeah.
from that field around psychedelics, right? So you have an
Mhm.
understanding of it. You look at that at a different lens than maybe someone that is a novice compared to knowing about that industry. I was talking to someone else who was deep in AI and software development, and he was like, Mike, I'm bullish on data centers, right? Everyone with these AI and building chat bots and people being able to build, their own apps. It's just scratching the surface. And he said every day it's exponentially growing. He was like, so I'm looking at the data centers, right? Because they're going to need that cloud computing, that energy to your point,
Yeah.
to support that. So yeah, it makes sense when you just look at it from a common sense and just get involved and get educated, and you can make your own decisions on what makes sense for you. So
Yeah.
I like that you share that. It's pretty cool. Um, why do you think why do you think retirement capital often aligns better with like passive investments versus like active ones?
Honestly, just because it's easier. Being able to have things more passive and you don't have to touch it so much is just easier for us. And some of that is psychology. Like when we have to constantly tweak things, a lot of times we'll tweak things in ways that it goes wrong.
Hmm.
I'm sure there's people out there that have worked on projects and it's been almost perfect and you had to adjust one thing or another thing and then you did that and it's like, well, I got to do this adjustment over here and then you did that and you got to change something up on the other side and before you know it, you look at it and you're like, oh no, I messed up the whole thing.
Hmm.
Like sometimes we just tweak too much.
Yeah.
So if we are fully hands-on and we're doing these things all the time, sometimes we make bad calls because we're getting caught up in the emotions of it doesn't feel right. And then we do something and then that doesn't feel right. So we do something else. So when it's more passive and it's just kind of sitting there doing its thing and you don't have to interact with it as much, it kind of saves us from ourselves where we're not getting in our own way and tripping ourselves up and making the wrong call when the pressure's on or the markets start freaking us out. And I feel like that's where the biggest regrets come from financially is people start reacting emotionally to what's going on and then they do something about it. And then they look back on it once the emotion dissipates and they're like, why did I do that? That was a ridiculous idea.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then they're trying to come back from it.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, great point. It's just like getting in your own way.
Yeah.
It's like stop watching it. Like don't watch it every 5 minutes. Let it. So
Hmm.
someone said a great analogy. I just thought about this, right? It's like around goal setting or when you're trying to manifest something, right? You put that energy out there, and then you're like, I don't have it yet, or it didn't work yet.
Yep.
And like, hey, when you plant a flower or apple tree or orange tree, right? And you water it, you don't dig it up to see if it's growing, right? You
Yeah.
give it you give it time to transmute and cultivate. And
Hmm.
so you just made me think about that analogy.
Yeah. Patience is tough, man. That's for sure.
Yeah, it is tough. Yep.
Yeah.
So lending, right?
Hmm.
Lending versus like doing it yourself or operating, right?
Hmm.
Do you think there's some pros to cons to either one of those activities versus choosing to lend to someone and let them kind of do it versus like operating a machine or operating a business to try to generate a profit? Do you think there's like pros or cons to those?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think operating wise feels good. It's that control aspect. We like being in control. We like having things working the way we want them to work.
Mhm.
But, I really think the power is delegation and being able to put things out there and have things run on its own or trust people with things and all of that and in general. So often we trade our time for money, where I have an hour, so I get paid for an hour and everything in between. But really, the way to scale is how much impact can I make during this time? And
Mm,
that's what people don't think about because we get taught in this hourly wage kind of way of how much are you making? I make this much an hour, and that's how all the jobs are talked about. That's how salaries are put up, all this kind of stuff. But really, what you want to do is compound your time by
mhm,
making more impact.
mhm,
And if we can get to that point where you're not selling your time for money, but you're selling your time for impact, everything compounds and you can do so much more. Like last night, I spoke to, I think it was like 60 people. I
nice.
could do, 8, 9 sessions in a day most of the time. So I get 8, 9 people. Or I go to an event like that and I hit 60 people all in 1 hour.
That's
So
awesome.
this is how we make our time work for us is how do I compound what I'm already doing to, kind of multiply that and amplify these things where the operating side is nice and being able to have that control. But a lot of times we have to kind of scale and there is going to be fear with that because when we take things to another level or we take a risk on something like that there always is that fear of how is this going to go wrong But a lot of times it leads to things just going fine. And if it does go wrong, we usually learn from it and continue to grow with that anyways. So I think more people just need to be willing to face fear in general. And it really opens up your life in some pretty amazing ways if you're willing to put yourself out there like that.
Yeah, I love how you talked about leveraging time. That was a big learning curve for me. I was always a high achiever, so I always like did things on my own, and you start to realize that there's only so many hours in a day. So learning to delegate, learning to build a team, that was a big challenge for me, and it's starting to happen organically. And to your
Mhm.
point, I loved how you talked about impact because that's really what it was, what it is. I always use the word value, right? But
Mhm.
it's impact. The more people that you can impact, and the more levers that you can pull and leverage that you can create exponentially, it just blows everything out the water. So this is a great talk, man. What does a good passive investment look like for you today?
For me today, I think more of my passive investments or more in the stock market currently. I'm trying to build things up in my own portfolio to get more into the real estate market and then to get into farmland investing as well. I feel
Nice.
like these two areas are really great areas to get into next. I
Mhm.
think there's a lot there to really explore and understand and really set ourselves up with. And, you know a lot about that aspect of things too. And it's kind of your expertise. But these are just things I've wanted to do, and they've been on my mind for literally like probably 15 years. It's just getting to the capital level of doing it that way, and doing some life events first, getting married, having a baby, all these kind of things, and just kind of finding out the priority of which order I want to go in. But now that we're kind of finding the stability in our own family and my career, it's like, okay, let's build up for these bigger things we've been wanting now, because now it's time. Now we're ready for this. And I think that's the thing with life in general. There's no, right thing to do every single time. It's just right now in my time of life, right now, what is best for me. Maybe it is a short-term thing. Maybe it is just getting more comfortable in the stock market. Maybe it is getting out of the stock market and more into other assets, more tangible things. Maybe it's getting into, holding actual gold and silver. I was talking to someone last night who had literally bought a bunch of gold, not gold, silver bars that he had just because he had this idea that he thought the metals were going to go up, because we're out here in Nevada where we have a lot of mining and stuff. So that is something that's pretty close to people.
Mhm.
And it's gone up almost 100% for him. Like, it's been a crazy investment that's gone very well.
Mhm.
And you never really know where these things are going to take us. So sometimes it's, again, trusting that gut and hearing the little bit of news that you hear and seeing what's going on in the world and being like, it's going to go this way. I don't know how it's going to go this way, but it's going to go this way. And sometimes you're right, and sometimes you're wrong. We got to learn from it and adjust. A lot of times the emotions get in the way, and we
Mhm.
got to be careful of getting too emotional about certain things, because sometimes we want to buy in just because we want to buy in, and it's not actually a great idea.
Yeah, yeah. I love how you think and how you approach things strategically. When you talk about farmland and residential, what kind of leads you to, or what interests you about residential and that as a passive vehicle?
I just like how the market has been and the stability of the market over decades, and just kind of what this has looked like. And at the end of the day, we all need shelter, and we're just going to continue to build these things up. So, I mean, it's just an important part. It gives us some safety. It's something that you can use, renting out properties, selling properties to other people. Real estate typically is a pretty good investment in terms of the upside of it. Most things are continuously going up. There are times things drop and dip and they stall, but especially if you can hold long term, there's a pretty good bet that everything's just going to go up. So these things are pretty powerful. And then, like the farmland side, like, we need farms. Like, we cannot live as a society without farms. So, I mean, that's also a cool way to think about investment too, is like, what things do we need? Like, what things are non-negotiable? Because those things can't just disappear. And that can be a safe bet sometimes. It's just figuring out where in the market or where in that field is the best place to put all that money.
Yeah, yeah. When you talk about farm, it's crazy. I didn't, I never really thought about it, and maybe most people don't, especially if you don't grow up close to that cultural world, how important farming is. And I can remember
Mhm.
watching the show where the Shark Tank,
Yep, yep.
and they had a guy who was a farmer, and he created
Mhm,
like cool thing where he was able to like weather protect his crops, and it was
mhm,
cool. It was very basic. It was just something innovative that he created, and the way that Shark Tank kind of presented it was brilliant, because it got real emotional, and all of the tanks really loved his idea, and he was just like a real, just like simple guy. You could tell
Mhm.
he wasn't in it for the money or wasn't looking to be rich. He just came up with this normal idea to really help his crops last through specific types of harsh temperatures and weather. And the sharks just they said, farming is the cornerstone of this country. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do a lot of things, and people don't really realize that.
Yep.
And the shark just gave him like all of this money. The guy started crying. It was just amazing. So to your
It's
point,
awesome.
ever since I seen that episode, I've had a different perspective about farming and
Mhm.
an appreciation of how important it is for our country. You're right. We take advantage. We what's the word I'm looking for? We don't appreciate or really take the time to value it because we can just go to a grocery store and get our produce.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
Where did that produce comes from? So I have a better appreciation for that. So I like that you're thinking about that as well. That's so important. Um, what advice would you give someone sitting on a large retirement account who feels stuck in traditional options?
I would say just explore what's out there and don't be afraid of it. Sometimes, especially if we get a large retirement fund, we don't want to change things up because we got here and we were good getting here. So why change the path? And sometimes it is a good path to stay on, and we just got to trust what we're doing and continue to do it. But being able to pivot and be flexible in life is one of the most powerful traits we can have
Mm,
because life is not a straight path and it will never be a straight path.
mhm,
So maybe it isn't just like I got to change up everything, but maybe I got to really think and explore, is there a way to use some parts of this in a different way? Maybe it's diversifying it. Maybe it's changing it up. Maybe it's, just trusting someone else to manage it for a little bit. Maybe it's taking on maybe 30% for yourself to do self-directed and someone else takes on the 70%.
mm,
It's kind of up to you, but I think the best thing is exploring what is going to feel good for you and not letting fear lead that decision. I'm not saying let's go do something reckless and risky and just hope we don't lose it all. Like fear is a legit thing. Let's be honest with ourselves, but let's not let just a little bit of fear or a little bit of anxiety that comes with natural change stop us from upgrading or improving in some way because growth is always uncomfortable. That's why one of my favorite sayings is be comfortable being uncomfortable
mhm.
because you cannot grow unless you get uncomfortable.
Yes.
So sometimes we do got to kind of pursue that a little bit, but let's not push it too far. That's where the balance comes in too.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And what types of conversations do you think more investors should be having around retirement account?
I think there needs to be more conversations about emotions. I think a lot of people miss that piece of things and that people make mistakes financially because of their emotions. Whether they're in a situation presently where they're freaking out and they're trying to make a decision to fix it, and then they do something that sets them back 10 years in their retirement,
Mm,
or somebody who's so caught up and so scared about their retirement that they're not living their life now and they're living like bare minimums, super tight belt buckle, and they're just getting through life in survival mode with this idea like 40 years from now I'll really enjoy myself. And it's like, okay, cool, but if you're miserable for 40 years, like you're just going to magically change one day and start enjoying your life, you're going to not want to spend all your money. You're going to end up giving it out in like inheritance to people.
right,
So
right.
it's figuring out the emotional side of things, whether it's markets changing and it starts freaking us out, or we see a property investment start dropping in value, or something goes wrong and we got to figure it out. And just how do we manage these emotions without it hijacking our decisions and putting us in a spot that makes things worse? So I think that's the piece that we really need to focus on is just what am I feeling right now? And I think it's just not talked about enough. I mean, that's honestly why I got brought on to that wealth management meeting last night to give that talk, is they wanted me to hit that point because they do see it all the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Trent, this was awesome, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. You dropped so many gold nuggets. I can't wait to share this with the community. Uh,
Yeah.
for for those who are watching live and for those who are watching the replay, if this conversation resonated, share it with someone who's built success and is now thinking more intently about their capital and how to deploy it. And if you're curious about the self-directed IRAs and how they can be used for passive real estate backed lending, you'll find resources below in the description. My name is Michael Kieris. This is Trent. Thanks again for joining us. See you in the next episode.